Hello and welcome to What's With Healthcare podcast today. We are three nurses who have a combined 90-year history of working and observing healthcare in action. We come together for every podcast and talk about a topic related to the healthcare system from our different perspectives we've had from working and experiencing it. We're here to share this knowledge and our perspectives, and we want to hear from everyone out there who's listening in. We want you to help us to learn more and grow more and talk and share. That's why we're coming to you every week. We acknowledge and pay respects to the lands and the waterways of the traditional Aboriginal families from where we're podcasting from. So those lands are the Yugara, Turrbal and Darumbal peoples, and always was and always will be Aboriginal lands. Hello, everyone, and welcome to podcast 10. This is part of our Head to Toe of Health series. And in this one, we're still in the brain region because we're talking about another factor of an acquired brain injury, and that is of stroke. So in episode 9, we talked about the traumatic brain injury, which sits in that acquired brain injury part of the definitions that we talked about in episode 9. Now we're going into stroke. And, you know, there is phenomenally the two types of stroke that we're going to stick to and talk about in this episode. So I'm going to introduce Celeste. Sue's going to say hi, and she's going to take that over.
Thanks, Sue. Hi, everyone. So, broadly speaking, two types of strokes. There's the embolic stroke or ischemic, where there's a clot that has formed somewhere in the circulation and it's broken off and lodged somewhere in the vessel in the brain. And sometimes it could actually be a little plaque that's on a blood vessel as well. And it causes a lack of oxygenated blood flow getting to a certain part of the brain. And so then we see the symptoms of that particular area that the brain and its function is impaired. The second type is hemorrhagic stroke, and that's where a blood vessel in the brain has either broken or there might be a small aneurysm, which is a weakness in the vessel wall that bursts and causes bleeding into that area of the brain, which then puts pressure on the surrounding structures because the skull is like a closed box. So there's nowhere really for that excess fluid to go, and it pools and again will impair circulation to some of those cells of the brain, and we see the symptoms of stroke.
And it's, you know, and we can sort of see risk factors, and we can see people who are more prone to stroke and having either that ischemic embolic stroke or the hemorrhagic stroke. And hi, Isabel. We want to say hi to Isabel, and she's going to tell us more about that. And, you know, how can we, what is going to increase our risk of stroke?
There are several factors, and there are factors that come from your genetics, from your family, and there are factors that come from lifestyle choices and the things you do every day. Your habits and your good habits will protect you, and the bad habits, not so good habits, will increase the chances of you having a stroke. One of those things are smoking. And unfortunately, I see in healthcare a lot of people who still smoke. I have a few friends that are over 40 now. And I gotta admit, I'm a little bit worried because I love them and they're still, doing those kind of bad behaviors. And we should know better, right? But anyways, it is their life. They know what they're doing and, the risk factors. But yeah, okay, I just wanted to say it. Yeah. So
no, 100. No, Isabel, I'm going to back you 100%. I have got a few friends there too who, they're starting to look grey. This is where my brain goes. And they just, and I know they're entrenched in an addictive behaviour, and I get it. Addiction is a really hard thing to work around. But it's 100% possible. Everyone out there who is struggling with an addiction, whether it be food, smoking, alcohol, I do understand addictive behavior is really hard, but yeah, that's another topic we'll get to another day. But Yes. Sorry, Isabel. I just wanted to back you on that because I have friends, I worry about them too, but you can't change people unless they want to change. Hey.
That's it.
Absolutely.
The more we harp, the worse it is.
Absolutely. And yeah, so we just need to be there for them. They're your friends, you accept them as they are, and they know. I mean, they're
Yes,
healthcare
they do
professionals.
know.
Yeah, they know. All right. So another thing is having high blood pressure. This is also, there's a genetic component, but also lifestyle, what you do with nutrition and things like that, and exercise. Also having your abnormal blood lipids, again, nutrition, what you do with the sugar that you consume and the choices that you make with your food. And type 2 diabetes, that's another risk factor, and that's a very important one because there is a lot of people who are diabetic. And yeah, well, apart from having a stroke, there are many other consequences that type 2 diabetes can lead to a person having very bad health. Another thing is being overweight and obesity. Again, a lot of these things have to do with lifestyle choices, and people with heart, stroke, and cardiovascular diseases, that's another risk factor. And yeah, so I got another one, multiple risk factors, which is all the above.
So, and that's exactly a great point to point out, because some of us have collected heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and, multiple comorbidities, and we've packaged them all in one person. So we're really escalating our risks there, aren't we?
We are.
Yeah. And it's interesting in the facts when we get to talk about, like, in the Australian healthcare system, and the facts about it is that, it is, when we look at stroke statistics, is one of, the 387,000 in the data that we've got currently available, the 387,000 people who will have a stroke in Australia, 1.6 of that, sort of more than half of the group will be male. So there's more men having strokes than women. And about, if we looked at every 100 stroke patients, about 30 of them will die in the first year after their stroke. And most of that group, 15 to 20 of that group, will die within the first 30 days. So it's actually, it has a great high mortality. And of those 70 of that 100 that will survive will have some permanent disability afterwards, and, and maybe require some long-term care. So that's really hard as well, because they may not be prepared for that. They may have not had conversations about that. It can be really traumatic. And then if those 35 out of that 70 group who are not disabled, they will recover, but will they change their habits? So this is something we're going to talk about as well, and some of them will go on to have more strokes, and if they don't sort of have some changes in that. So that's information that I find really interesting, and I love understanding what's the bigger impact here. And, and of those, those groups that end up with a permanent disability, that impact that has on their life is massive. And, that I don't know how they find that sort of tenacity to keep going forward and, recovering and living with their illness. But the impact upon the healthcare system, because now they have to fall into the multidisciplinary care streams, and they have to have physiotherapy and occupational therapy and speech pathology and all of those things. They might need more care facilities that they can live with their disability more confidently and competently. And they might need more family support. And, families are really stretched today because everyone's working. It's really hard to be there for them as well. So I just probably trying to nutshell the impact that having a stroke has. It's not just something that I can have, be in hospital for one day, take a pill, go home, good as gold the next day. this sort of stuff has bigger implications. And as a nurse caring for someone with a stroke, you know, how does that impact me? Like, what is my experiences in caring for someone with a stroke and their family? So, you know, I'm going to hand over to these great people I'm here with to sort of go, hey, what's your experience in having, you know, well, how do we help these people?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Sue. And it's, you know, I think everyone out there at the coalface would understand about how it's not, there's a lot of things that come into it, isn't there? We need to think about where that person's at that point in time, and when's the right time to give information, when are people open to information, or when are the opportunities. And it's not always about telling, sometimes it's just asking questions, isn't it? And you know, depending on our workloads, we're not always present, and so we just got to find our way around that and navigate it the best we can. And I know I've had a recent experience with a patient who had a TIA, or a transient ischemic attack, where it was like a mini stroke, and by the time the ambulance had picked them up and brought them into the department, all their symptoms had resolved. They'd lasted only a few minutes, and they were feeling really relieved, but they were worried at the same time, and curious, and the partner was curious as well, and they were asking a lot of questions. And as it just happened that I had the time while I was in there doing their cares, doing the patient's cares, that I could tap into that and give a bit of information, just trickle. And they were really receptive to it, and they asked more questions, and then we, you know, I could ask them, you know, these are sort of the bigger factors that contribute to it, and this is a real opportunity to have a bit of a like wall back. This could happen for real again, and what are some things that maybe I could change going forward to reduce the risk in going forward. So that was a really empowering conversation, but they don't always come up as nicely as that, but that was a good one to share.
Yeah. And I think I like that point where you said it was, you had time to have those incidental conversations, and you did that slow trickle. So you weren't being, you know, you weren't lecturing, you weren't telling, you weren't at the patient, you were, you know, and I think that's sometimes what happens. You know, I know when I've looked at patient feedback sometimes from, you know, data sets, and I see that patients sometimes feel that we are just at them, and we're really sort of, you know, do this, and this, stop doing that, and that. And they just get really fearful, and they get frightened, and they walk away. And I wonder if inevitably, and it's not our fault, I think sometimes we're fatigued and we're tired, and we know, you know, naturally, because of our education, we know the right and wrong way of looking after the human body. But you know, the health literacy of all of our consumers out there is really low. So, I mean, half of them still don't know what side of the body their heart's on. So then we're asking them to take on all these big concepts all of a sudden, on top of having a traumatic event happen to them. You know, so it is really hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I can say that that's one instance where the demands of the rest of my patients in that instance helped, because I could only give little tidbits at a time, and then I had to go care for somebody else. But they gave them an opportunity to sort of think about that, and then come back with the next question the next time I went in. So I really like to celebrate those little ones, because it doesn't always go like, you don't always get those opportunities. And you know, and when someone's in an acute situation, that's not the time to be doing education, is it? Like, you know, we just give information that's required at the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was gonna follow up on that thought, because the acute setting, as you just said, is probably not the best place to educate or expect that the patient take all the information and go away, you know, by himself, change behavior and do all the right things, you know, at once. that's not the right setting, and that's probably not the right support, because we talked about these things before, but fear is not the best motivator to change behavior and to make smart lifestyle changes that last forever. So that requires a more deeper kind of work that requires for the patient, and also for us as healthcare professionals, because we are not free from having these kind of problems, from having type 2 diabetes, from having stroke, from having all these kind of issues. So if we are to change behavior and change bad habits and take up on good ones, that requires asking yourself, why is it that I'm going to be making these changes? Why is this important to me? And having this deep reflection, and and talking to even to yourself or to someone else that can help you find out also what's the best way to get to where you want to get to. And that requires a different kind of setting, a different kind of support, and requires a different kind of motivation that is not fear, that is more deeper than that, that is as to why is it that I'm making these changes.
Yeah, because Isabel, you're talking about that internal motivation. What is my internal motivation to make change? And I don't know, you've all got your own sort of, but I know I've got clients now who, that I've got one client who is quite new, and she wants to make change because she's got some grandchildren arriving into the universe in the next 6 months. And so she wants to be a really healthy grandma, and she wants to be able to run in the park with her grandkiddos and all that sort of stuff. So her internal motive, so she's she hasn't been motivated before really strongly to get into healthy eating patterns and move more, and so she's trying to make change towards that, and with the focus being on running in the park with her future grandchildren.
That sounds like a great motivator.
100%. And that's why she highlighted that. I've never had that internal, like I've never had something this brilliant to work towards before. So and I think, Isabel, you were talking about before how people know what they need to do, but and they might do it for a little bit of time, but then they fall off the wagon. And
yes, and that's part of the process as well. Sometimes you start making change, and you are not gonna, it's not gonna be perfect. Sometimes you have your goals, and then but you need to pick up yourself up and start doing it again,
and that self-kindness, isn't it, Isabel? Thinking, being kind to ourselves about that didn't go so well. What did I learn?
Absolutely, that's part of it. That's part of making change. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be a straight line, but it's going to be something like this, like going up and down, up and down, up and down. But the general trend is going up to reach whatever goal it is that you have.
Yeah. And I think that point, Celeste, about you saying that, be kind to yourself. We're not robots, we're human, and we have feelings. We have good days, we have bad days. And you know what? On a bad day, I might have an extra glass of wine, and that doesn't help me. Okay. But you know what? Next day, I'm going to not do that, and I'm going to get myself back on track, and I'm going to pull myself together, and I'm going to generally, stick to my goals, but, and I think self-kindness, and self-compassion is really, I don't know, do you see that being something that people struggle a lot with now?
Yeah, I do. I think we're across the board, in my experience, we're very judgmental of one another as well as ourselves. And when you have that high level of judgment, it's pretty hard to come out of that feeling good. If you're not feeling like you're enough, or you've done something well enough, or and then you're trying to create a new habit and you have a slip up. It's that thing, well, hang on a minute. Well, yeah, I'm disappointed about it, but I still did it twice this week of the 4 times that I planned to do it. So, well, that's 50%. Oh, well, that's not so bad. So celebrate 50%. What did we learn? What could I do differently next time? Maybe there's nothing, but maybe it's just, well, it happened and now I'm going to keep going forward. And like Isabel, you were saying about the twists and turns, that the overall pattern, I think that's what we lose sight of, isn't it? That we just look at the one fall and then think, oh, bugger it, that's it. I'm a lost cause, instead of thinking, but hang on, I'm here and I could keep going.
Yeah.
I am progressing. It just doesn't feel like very far.
Yeah. And I think because James Clear talks about it beautifully in his book Atomic Habits, where he talks about that 1%. So if basically I start, and I can look week by week and go, you know what, I am 1% better this week than I was the previous week. And because what happens naturally is actually after 20 weeks, I'm 20% better than I was 20 weeks ago. So now I've got this compounded interest where I'm going, you know what, I'm going to get there, because I'm actually, and changing habits doesn't happen overnight either. I can't stop drinking, particularly, I had a friend and he had a stroke and he was a significant drinker, and he did that whole stop drinking, did the change of patterns that Isabel was talking about, but then his stroke totally reversed. He had no residual disability. He had no losses at the end, with all of his support with physio and everything. So, he's 5 years down the track now and he has had everything's fine. So he's resumed old behavior. So can you see? That's he's building towards another massive stroke. And he may not be so lucky on the next one, because he's now older. He's got a lot more damage. He's got a previous incident. His risk factors are so much more higher. So, so his patterns that he changed at the beginning, he did quite dramatically, but he couldn't hold on to them.
So that's
sad. That's really sad, because all the work he did, it's just that it wasn't for the right reason. See,
exactly right.
Why? It was because perhaps fear of not having another one, but that's not a strong motivator, because after a while the fear goes away.
Well, he's forgotten. He's basically forgotten the stroke. He's forgotten all the hard work he did with the physiotherapist and the occupational therapist. It's like it didn't happen. So because, his motivation to drink is far greater than his motivation to not have a stroke.
I wonder if there's an element of, well, I've done it before, I could do it again.
Oh, and there very well could be in that, couldn't there?
Like a twisted positive reframe.
But I think, that's where I think that addictive behavior sits in there, because there's a deeper psychology why we do everything. Sometimes, like for me, I find myself eating something and then I'm looking at it going, why am I eating that? And then I realized it was just because I walked past it sitting out on the table and I took it and I put it in my mouth. So there actually wasn't a process. There wasn't a right process going on there. And so that is a reminder to me how easy it is to just
not be mindful.
Exactly. And not be mindful and go, oh, I wasn't thinking. And so I know for him, he's got a lot of people around him, for instance, who he'll walk into a room and they'll just give him a beer because he always has a beer. So I wonder sometimes if he's drinking a beer just simply because someone gave it to him, as opposed to him wanting it. I think that's, and I think that's, goes to that whole piece around habits as well, is that when we change a habit as well, we need to have everyone on board. We need to tell everybody what we're trying to change, and we need to really get our support team behind us so that, when they see us, so when we walk into a room, we go, oh, do you just want a water or do you want a soft drink? Because, you know, I know you're trying to stop drinking beer. So I'm going to offer you some other, you know, another drink of, you know, maybe a nice soda water or something like that, so that, you know, you're hydrated.
But that's so funny because we do the opposite, man. We go, it's just a piece of chocolate. It's not going to do anything. And I'm guilty of that.
But yeah, and I think, you know, and I know with a lot of my clients as well with their movement goals, because some of them haven't got a long history and an affinity for moving. They just, you know, they can give foreign. Yeah, they can give me a lot of good reasons why they don't do it. So even, you know, like it's too hot, I don't walk outside, I don't, you know, they can give me a lot of rules about why they're not, like, you know. And so it's interesting when I like, because sometimes I'll be like, okay, well, we've got a session coming up next week, let's do it while we're walking. And you can see them like, oh, can I do that? And you're like, well, you can walk whenever you want to walk. You know, and so I think it's that whole getting that support team around you. So, you know, if it is a movement goal, who can be around you who you might want to go for walks with? You know, all of those things. It's all about, you know, how can we, like, so if someone has had a stroke and we do need to get, you know, and maybe they are reluctant to exercise because they don't like it. Well, you know, there is something that someone will like out there. So how can, you know, the family unit come together to sort of support some movement goals?
I was reading an article the other day. They were talking about using virtual reality, like a Wii, and the little headgear for people and who've survived a stroke with their rehab, and it really helped with that, you know, the neglect of the side that's weaker. And it had really positive outcomes. I thought, oh, that could be more fun for some people than the drabness of doing certain exercises.
Yeah. Oh, I remember back in the day when I learnt, you know, about nursing a patient who's got, you know, that left-sided deficit, you know, so they've had a right-sided stroke, and so they've got the left side now. They ignore the left side of their body because of the way the right and left brain works. You know, that's inevitably what will happen. And they always used to teach us, you know, you need to place all of their belongings on the left side. You need to put everything left side dominant to make them reach across themselves and realize they still have a left side and everything. So but wouldn't it be exciting if we could do more than that? You know, and come up with some other things that we can do. So yeah, I don't know there is so many new things out there, and I think virtual reality has got its place, definitely. Yeah. So is there anything else that really helped your patients, guys, that we can think of before we head out for the day?
I think one thing that I've observed looking after people after their strokes is that there's a high incidence of depression for a lot of people who survive stroke. And so I guess that's multifactorial, but, you know, because things change, you know, whether it's their function, whether it's how they see themselves, how they see the world. And so that changes things for their family as well. And sometimes there's personality changes and stuff. And there's a lot to sort of literally wrap our heads around after an event like that. So the Stroke Foundation has a lot of resources and information there to help, and even for staff and, you know, health professionals that are wanting more information about how to care for someone that has particular deficits and so forth. I just thought I'd put that out there too.
Yeah, well, we'll put a slide up with some links to maybe some more information, and that could help people to find some more information after today.
So thanks everyone for joining us today. If you find that what we've talked about really resonated for you and you liked it, please like, share and subscribe to our podcast, and follow us on our Facebook page or on YouTube. And if you have any suggestions for future podcast topics, then let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear about it.